Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
One round sorted in the books of the iRacing Grand Prix Tour, and quite simply put, for the first time in this series, it is the road of Eduardo Radice that has to be traversed by every other driver in order to get to the top of the championship. We come today to one of 3 home races this season for Eduardo Radice, and here, of course, at the Autodromo Internazionale del Mugello, this is where the second round of the championship becomes so important for all drivers who are racing here today. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone watching around the world. My name is Jake Sperry. Alongside me in the booth for this one, as per usual, is Taylor Mills, with Dan Yeaman on production for us here today, as we'll take a look at this fantastic Mugello circuit, built here in the Tuscan hills and mountains, and a track which, when you sit down and look at it, is just tailor-made to be one of the brilliant, I would say, driving tracks out there in the world. Taylor, this is one where overtaking might be a little bit more difficult today, but it's all about giving yourself opportunities around a wonderful track as we take our Google Earth view down to our circuit.
Well, first of all, good evening, Sperry, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the gorgeous Tuscan region even of Italy, and to the fabulous Mugello circuit. A track has been on this site since the 1920s and has since become a 5.2 kilometer blast up and down some absolutely outrageous hills. Start of the lap, couple of twisty bits, but then you get down to Casanova at turn 6 and it's a flat out blast for the rest of the lap. We say overtaking can be quite difficult here, but it is of course assisted by that one DRS zone down the start finish straight, which is a 1.2 kilometer flat out push from the apex of turn 15 down to the braking zone of turn 1. It's going to be turn 1 and 12 where you're looking for those overtakes here tonight, as it's pretty much going to be a roller coaster ride and hanging on for the rest of the lap.
Yep, and that DRS activation line is just on the tip-in for the final corner, the long left-hander of Bucine, and then that charge up the hill towards San Donato, which leads on to another lap here at Mugello. So that's going to be worth keeping in mind as these drivers will all look to try and attack. But this championship has been a very important one in a number of realms. 2 championships to deal with here today, your iRacing Championship and your SimSpeed Championship, which have brought themselves together. There's where your iRacing Championship stands. Eduardo Radice taking the bulk share of the points. Friday nights are strength of field nights, and so your top 5 in the championship, outscoring the earlier split that was there, won by Adam Webb in 6th position. Emil Bernstorff, Doriano Ricciuti, James Byrne, and Edward Apari-Ari, they're making the top 10. But in the SimSpeed standings, that's how they all finished out with us 1 week ago. Eduardo Radice picking up his 3rd win here in the iRacing Grand Prix Tour, and that win good enough to send him for the first time ever to the top of the standings.
Yeah, and it's going to be everyone versus Eduardo Radice yet again tonight. It was very much a story of tyre wear last time out at Phillip Island. We saw Jacob Reed take that slightly earlier pit stop to try and gain some of that deficit he had on Eduardo Radice. He managed to claw that back, but he pushed those tires way, way, way too hard at the start of that final stint. And that completely ruined any life left in them for that final push to the line. And it could be a similar story out there tonight. With the amount of high-speed corners out there on the circuit, you're really going to have to look after the rubber.
59 laps worth of racing today, 309 kilometers. They must use 2 tyre compounds, soft, medium or hard. DRS activated at the start of lap 3, and only one race in the past, which was won by Jacob Reed, who got himself his title crown over the course of last season. But qualifying is pretty much wrapped up and in the books. This is the strategies that we're keeping our eyes out on. So 2 lots of theoretical data provided to us by Volta Lux, who gives us the idea of a 2-stop strategy, either 2 mediums or 2 softs today to get that sorted. And then the winning strategy from the 10 o'clock race that we saw earlier on today by Eduardo Radice, your championship leader, going 20-20-19 on mediums and softs. So that's all to keep in mind. But let's take ourselves over to the starting grid for today's action at the Autodromo del Mugello, and it is one where your championship leader lines up on pole position. Eduardo Radice on a 1:15.8, only driver in the 15s. He'll have Jacob Reed alongside for company, the 2-time reigning champion. Florian Kammeyer will start from 3rd with Edward Apari-Ari along with him for company. A first start of the season on row 3 for Alex Hagland. He'll go from 5th, and he's got the South African George van Rensburg there for company in P6. It's then Anthony Cat who finds himself in 7th with Connor Pooler in 8th position, with Doriano Ricciuti starting in 9th along with James Byrne, the New Englander, there in P10. It's a star-studded row 6 as Volta looks to try and move into the top 10. He finished 4th a year ago. He's got Emil Bernstorff for company. Number 1 has the highest iRacing in the field. Danilo Piazza and Jason Green, they are both on row 7 of this field, with Norton Motta in 15th position and Jorge Martinez out of position in P16. It's then Adam Webb and Lyle Pienaar who find themselves together on the 9th row, and your top 20 is rounded out by Kent Nielsen, who has the most starts in series history with 61. This is 62nd. Start tonight, and naturally qualifying for Brad Newman, as you've got Paul O'Regan, 46 starts, 30 top 10 finishes, no top 5s and no retirement. So we'll see what Paul O'Regan can do here today, but the long climb is going to be important here around this circuit. A track temperature of 22 degrees is cold and favors the soft compound tyre runners here today, because they can keep those tyres in an operating window for longer. But these 59 laps and the climb up to San Donato for the first time becomes what these drivers think about. Jacob Reed had a poor start last time at Phillip Island. Can he rectify those issues here today as we get ourselves set with lights on and lights out, and we are underway here at Mugello. A stormer of a start there by Edward Apari-Ari, who looks to challenge, and they fan out along the straight, 3 wide, almost 4 wide as they go through. Apari-Ari on the outside, Radice on the inside, the middle is there. Cars going off there in the opening section of track and having to abandon ship. Doriano Ricciuti was one of those. They went in through Luca, and now Borgia San Lorenzo. It is the homeboy who leads.
Oh, and there's big contact in the background as well, as I think that was Alex Hagland getting tangled up with Brad Newman on the exit of turn 3 there, as both cars are going to be effectively out of this race very early on. Colin Pooler looks like he got caught up in that one as well, but that front row got absolutely nowhere off the start, but somehow managed to stay in front. Brilliant bit of driving from Apari-Ari to try and stick it around the outside, but the grip in the tyres just isn't there yet.
It was Anthony Cat who was the driver, caught up with Alex Hagland, and Anthony Cat was on his roll hoop and out of the race in the early stages of this one. A couple of drivers have started on the hard compound tyres. Danilo Piazza, Doriano Ricciuti and Jorge Martinez. Kent Nielsen's also started on the hard. Everybody else has gone for the medium compound tyre then to start this race here at Mugello, and Radice leads this field with Jacob Reed behind him. Florian Kammeyer then is looking back in tow. So for that fantastic start for Edward Apari-Ari, he has made a grand total of 0 places off the start.
Well, speaking of places off the start, you got to give credit to Jacob Reed this time, who managed to actually stay where he started. He's already tucked under the rear wing of Eduardo Rodis. Speaking of rear wings, he's not going to have the chance to open that one yet because we've still got another racing lap to go before we even think about activating DRS, as George van Rensburg has gone off in the back.
Yeah, so George van Rensburg now spinning down the order, and that's going to be a huge shock for him. He was in 5th position. He's looped it on the exit of Luca, and in fact, he has damaged the front wing and throws it in there because his car is damaged beyond repair, and that will be a confirmed retirement for the South African. George van Rensburg then, another retiree, and our 3rd already in just the space of 2 laps worth of racing. Rodis knows that the DRS flap will open on his next lap through as they charge through the Corontayo corner, this long parabolic style section through the far chicane of the Biondetti and over towards Bucine, this corner which always drops down the hill to a point, and then you start to make that climb back up the other way again. Looks up 6 places off of the start. So too is Emil Bernstorff. James Byrne has had a great start to this race as well and has made all the progress, but up the hill they go, and now they look to attack the opening sections of this lap. Now expect on that next lap the all-importance to be placed on these drivers trying to make their way around, but Jacob Reed has cleverly kept himself in range, and so too Florian Kammeier, who has won races in the past. He's only got 1 of them, and that was last year at Aragon.
Well, he'll be keeping an eye on the fight in front of him because it is about to hot up. It will be DRS activated this time by, as they'll be able to get that rear wing flap opened on that start-finish straight. Jacob Reed struggled to keep his car within that DRS window late on at Phillip Island, but for right now, he's got the tyres in the right window, 0.6 of a second behind your race leader for now, and he might even be able to get an attack launch down into turn 1 on this time by.
He very much might do, and we will soon see as that all looks to put itself into play. But Rodis currently your leader, Reed in 2nd, and then Florian Kammeier finds himself in that 3rd space and looking to try and give what he can out there on circuit. Secondary packs and tertiary packs starting to form. The 3-car group of Byrne, Bernstorff and Lux find themselves all in play, but this is what we want to see. This is where the DRS comes into play, and we look at that 2nd group, which also looks to be closer. Emil Bernstorff, the former GP2 driver, using all of that top speed, 310 kilometers an hour up the hill. He gets the pass, and they've changed for the race lead. Jacob Reed, now your new race leader.
Yep, 2 brilliant passes for position, getting that DRS open all the way. Eduardo Rodis, though, could do absolutely nothing at the front of the field, being the first car to hit that wall of air coming into turn 1. Reed with that extra bonus speed from the DRS being open, and Eduardo Rodis feigned to the inside, but ultimately could do absolutely nothing to defend from the 2-car.
No, he couldn't do anything about that, especially with the high speed. So now he's got to try and bring himself back into line and just hold himself steady with the way that everybody now looks at this. Everyone has been looking around at what they're doing with setup, and I don't think there's many surprises here to say that most drivers have gone for the high downforce package here today to give themselves as much grip as possible around this track. As we take a look on lap 4, heading towards lap 5 here of 59 in this race. The fastest lap check mark along with Jacob Reed at the moment, who has set the fastest lap of this race. No bonus points this season to deal with, so there's a lot of work to do. Hagland, by the way, did get back out on circuit, had a set of softs, but I think is just about to pull that back into the pit, so he takes another tow as Jacob Reed goes purple again. But here comes the look from Eduardo Rodis, diving down the inside at San Donato, but not quite finding that move.
I got to say, I was quite surprised that Rodis even thought about going for that one. It's the time in the race where you want to get these moves done and really try and start to apply that pressure. But from 0.7 of a second, I just didn't think he was close enough. And the facts really proving my my prediction on that one, as Rodis just could not make that move stick.
No, he certainly couldn't. These 3 are clear at the front of this field, and the difficulty, the dirty air going through the 2 Arrabbiata corners here, trying to navigate through a tough middle sector. I want to look back at the group, which is currently led by Danilo Piazza at the moment, in 9th place, if at all possible, because you've got Ricciuti, Jason Green, Jorge Martinez, Lyle Pinar there on the back of it, Kent Nielsen, Nacho Gaspar, and also Connor Pooler. It is a stacked mid-pack of this group.
How many times did we say it last time out? Everyone is underneath a blanket at the moment. Of course, DRS doing a great job to keep everyone packed so closely together on that start-finish straight. But ultimately, we've got a lot of drivers tackling a lot of dirty air, especially that deep back in the pack, and they're all handling it brilliantly. Here's Connor Pooler for you, who is right at the tail end of that, and he's going to have a really big slipstream on everyone in front. So let's see if he can do anything down into turn one as that speed climbs.
Connor Pooler, a driver who finished top 10 in the championship last year, missed the opening round at Phillip Island, but eyes up as Nacho Gaspar moves to the left-hand side against Kent Nielsen, who, of course, has the most starts in iRacing Grand Prix Tour history, has a moment as he wiggles on the exit of San Donato, and stealing through at Luca is Connor Pooler. Thank you very much.
Yeah, the outside line and turn one really looking preferred when it comes to making any sort of defense, as it looks like there was just nothing to really use on the inside. The tires were absolutely screaming by that point in the corner, and you're not going to be able to get any sort of exit, which is exactly what we just saw there, which is what allowed Connor Pooler to move his way up in the standings a little bit, as it's now him looking forward to try and make up another position soon.
Yeah, and those positions are going to be quite crucial. Connor Pooler has Tobias Saal working as his spotter at the moment, so he's got a little bit more insight out there. Tobias Saal, a driver who is very quick of his own right, has had top 5 finishes here in the iRacing Grand Prix Tour. James Byrne, of course, also has his spotter. We're not sure who it is, but at the moment it's classified as Jamie Byrne, which I think could just be his alternate account, which is out there trying to give some help. It might be his dad or something of that ilk, but at the moment, down the hill, out of Bussine, once again, Anthony Katz been out, around and back in for another time. There comes the move that gets it done. Volta Lux then making his pass through and gaining forward on the medium compound tyre, making the pass. So an all-important move there for Lux, as he now looks to try and catch to the back of Edward Apariari, who has been ceremoniously dropped from the leading trio.
Which isn't really a surprise, because Kamaya Radis and Reed are the absolute class of the field. Apariari tends to go for something a little bit different on the strategy, so this might be a bit of a tyre saving game to try and get those mediums a little bit further into the race than we might otherwise expect. We talked about how the track temperature is going to come down as the race ticks by. So here's my bold race prediction for today. Apariari, 1 stop, medium to soft.
Well, that might be a big, bold call from Edward Apariari. If he can manage that, he'd probably have to go at least to lap 35 on his set of medium compound tyres if he wants to unlock that and try the Adam Webb strategy to get himself over and through in terms of this race. But he now knows how difficult it is, and it starts getting aggressive here behind the hard runners of Danilo Piazza and Doriano Ricciuti, who find themselves with the 21 and 18s out there. But look behind here for Doriano, that's Jason Green looking for a SimSpeed Championship point as he moves over to the right side, 3 wide on the run to San Donato. Green down the inside picks up the run. Ricciuti has to give that one up, and Jason Green puts himself now P9.
As a driver that was absolutely unremarkable in the first race of the season, Jason Green finding himself up in P9, making moves like that down the inside of turn 1 and 3 wide. That is a heck of a step forward in the space of a week. Keep an eye on the driver of that 20, because he might be moving forward as this race continues.
Jason Green, a driver who finished 28th in the championship last year, scored 11 championship points. His best finish last season was a 7th at Aragon, and he had an 8th at the Hockenheimring and a 10th place at Long Beach. Those were his 3 championship scoring points, so he's on hot form here today as he looks to try and put his best foot forward in what is a star-studded group that goes all the way back to Paul O'Regan. Now, we'll take a little bit of a look here on what happened earlier. This was Eduardo Radis and Jacob Reed, and this was Reed holding around the outside of San Donato, giving himself the inside for Luca at turn 2, and then giving himself the place back. So Luca there being an important corner. Jacob Reed showing at least right now that you can defend the run at San Donato.
Yeah, as I said, the outside being the much better corner to make the run through turn 1, especially because it gives you the inside. down into turn 2 with that extra momentum. You don't have to wait to get the car moving out of the turn. It's already there and up to speed for you. And Radish, just on that tighter line, he really tried to make that work, and I think that's about as good as he's going to do, unless he can get some overlap on the left-hand side of the circuit at some point in this one.
There we take a look on board with James Byrne here in 7th position on lap 9 here of 59, staring down the back of Emil Bernstorff, a driver who will strike fear into the hearts of every driver who races against him by his name, brand and reputation alone, as Byrne holds himself through the corner. Just his 2nd start in the iRacing Grand Prix Tour. He is now looking at 2025 and saying, this is my series that I'm going to be running all year long. Down the hill through the Bucine, issue he's going to run into, Bernstorff's going to have DRS on Volta Lux, so there's going to be not really much that can be done out there on track to make a huge inroad here along the long straight up the hill.
And you could see just how much he was struggling with understeer in that final sector. You had those really high downforce corners of 10 and 11 really pinning the car back, but you know, just in front of us, we saw Emil Bernstorff making a move on Volta Lux. I think he actually got that one done down the inside of one, which is something we've been alluding to being really difficult. But as you said, Sperry, Bernstorff is absolutely terrifying to see outside there, to see out there on circuit. And if anyone can make that sort of move work, it's going to be the driver of the number 1 car.
What a section of track this is, from Casanova down into Savelli, as there goes Adam Webb through on Brad Newman for a position. Now, here's a little fact about Brad Newman. Last year, he made his first start of the season here at Mugello. He finished 20th position overall in that race, but crucially, won the fastest lap of everybody out there. He's down in what is 19th position, so he's going to do better than what he did a year ago, but the question will be, can he get the fastest lap again?
Well, there's certainly going to be opportunities to do it, with everyone starting on the mediums, switching onto those softs much later on in this race. Maybe Newman's going to have a chance to try and make that big push, but he's not going to get it done like that. Very, very deep into turn 10. Has to drop way off the back of Adam Webb. And just looking at the timing screens, I think that it almost puts Webb in a safe window. The gap between these two right now at about 9/10 of a second as they make their way through the DRS detection point.
They'll definitely love a gap of 9/10 of a second to work with and continue on in their race. Scarperia was the corner where it didn't quite work. We got changes going on in the mid-pack here. Jason Green has lost those places back again to Ricciuti and Piazza. It now puts Lyle Pienaar, the South African, behind him. Connor Pula, Club UK9. Nacho Gaspar, the Spaniard out there with Jorge Martinez. And I'm so shocked to see Jorge Martinez so far off the pace, down in 15th position right now. Here is a driver who has won races in the iRacing Grand Prix Tour, is a constant threat to win races in the iRacing Grand Prix Tour, and he's nowhere.
I think this is something that really speaks to the level of talent we have in this field today. It is a 5.3, almost 5.4K strength of field, and as much as I'll always say iRating doesn't matter that much, as Ricciuti, I think, just loses a position to Green there. Just look at the names in this field, and it's what makes the likes of Martinez get shuffled right the way down the order, as we are just following Ricciuti to try and follow on from what happened there.
He had a big moment. He had a huge moment coming out of through Scarperia, and it was the next corner of Pelagio where he had the trouble. He had a full half broadside slide through the gravel, able to save it, but it's not going to cost him 1 place. It's not going to cost him 2. It might just cost him 3 up the hill towards turn 1. Here comes Lyle Pienaar trying to go around the outside of San Donato, looking to get this done on lap 12. He struggles a little bit on the exit, but Luco is his corner, and he takes the place.
Oh, look at that pack as well, and what a move to make stick against that field. Oh, they are shuffling for positions in the background there as well. I think Connor Pula trying to make up spots against Series Debutant Nacho Gaspar, who couldn't quite make it stick. But I'm so surprised with how close everyone is together at this point. I think being helped out a little bit by the fact that Danilo Piazza is on those slightly slower but much more durable hard compound tires. Pair that with the DRS, pair that with just how quick everyone is right now, and that's going to bring everyone from 9th on back really close together, as it's a big defense to the inside for Connor Pula there.
Well, it is an absolute bottleneck at the moment through the Biondettis as they now look to go back all the way to Paul O'Regan in 17th position out there at this moment in time, but they've changed for the lead. Eduardo Radice through at San Donato, and a mile before San Donato he got that move. So you can defend with the energy recovery system up the straight, try and hold off any dramas that you've got, as in comes Jorge Martinez with a little bit of a different strategy. But the issue you're going to run into is, well, you can defend for so long, but the DRS is just so powerful up the hill.
And you said it as well with the ERS. You could see that Reed was deploying all of it all the way down that straight. That car didn't start derating until it was just before the braking zone for turn one. Unfortunately, the 160 extra horsepower from the MG UK isn't quite enough to overcome the extra 15 kilometers per hour speed boost you get from that rear wing flap opening.
Oh, wow.
And finally, after waiting, Radice has finally retaken the lead.
So Jorge Martinez is tired of being stuck in that group. He's come off of his hard set of tyres and he's put on a set of the soft. So this is either going to be an elongated second stint of this race, or this is the first real, I would say, gauge of trying to make a three-stop strategy work here today.
And I think that's a really interesting choice from Martinez as well, to switch to the softs. He's going to be so quick for the first 8 or 9 laps or so of this stint, and it's really going to help make up that time later on in the race, as Jacob Reed has in fact retaken the lead down into turn one on Eduardo Radice. Florian Camayo, though, is kind of sitting in the background here as a bridesmaid and just saving tyre, saving energy, and waiting for a chance to pounce, because these two are scrapping so hard that they are not dropping that third place car, and he's being extremely patient, credit where it's due.
Yeah, Florian Camayo wasn't really on the pace when it came to Phillip Island for the season opener that we had, of course, there 1 week ago. He finished 8th in that race, but by no means was he up there threatening for the race win. Here today, a lot different. He is threatening here for the race victory out there, and because he's not doing anything and the drivers in front are constantly chopping and changing, here is a driver who could certainly throw a cat amongst the pigeons and say, I am also in here fighting for the World Championship here today, as he now runs through Busin corner. Worth noting as well, behind, Edward Apariari has morphed into that group. Bernstorff's gone through, Lux has gone through, and now James Byrne trying to move up the American here into P6.
And it's brilliant to see so many different faces up at the front of the field this time out. It's a lot of people we've seen up here before, but as we go to different tracks that play into different driver strengths, of course, much more higher downforce here, as I think we're watching James Byrne just make a position on Edward Apariari there. It's, as the downforce package has changed, that might suit a certain driver's driver style a little bit more. It might be why we're seeing so much more pace out of Jacob Reed today, but even then, it's not enough for him to be slower than Radice right now. But credit where it's due for James Byrne. Brilliant, easy move down the outside into turn one, really taking advantage of that DRS and his tyres.
Yeah, and this group continues behind Piazza, Green ahead of Ricciuti. Pinar now looks out because here comes the next search at the next chicane section of track. Connor Pooler trying to get his angle done there through at Materazzi and not find that move. Down the hill at Casanova, he's got the move done. And look at how much Lyle Pinar has lost out on the exit. Nacho Gaspar was able to almost get himself through. It got tight between them as they went through at Arrabbiata, but tight doesn't give yourself enough. Just that was enough that if they got any closer, that could have been an end plate gone.
How many times at Phillip Island did we see those momentum loss style overtakes? Connor Pooler making a move stick exactly where you're not able to make one happen, and it just killed all of Pinar's momentum through that sector and left him so vulnerable to attack from everyone behind, as he's now got to defend from the likes of Gaspar and Nielsen, as Connor Pooler has his eyes solidly on the rear end of Ricciuti right now.
Yeah, he wants to get through, but we're on lap 16 here of 59 overall, and we focus on your leading trio to Materazzi corner and the Borgo San Lorenzo. This is, or the second group, sorry, that's Volta Lux with Emil Bernstorff and James Byrne. Edward Apariari has been completely dropped off of this group, so whatever he's doing on his race set here out there, Taylor, it is just chewing through tyre.
But is it though? Is this a way for him to save tires, save a little bit of pace, save putting so much energy into those medium compound tires and extend them in deeper into the race? Again, that's what I think he's going to try, because we always like to see a driver doing something a little bit different. But right now, it doesn't really look like the strategy, just because of how much time he's losing relative to everyone else around him. He's just outside the DRS window of James Byrne in front, and I think that's really going to hamper his race time. But he's trying to make something work. Keep an eye on him, because we know that he can pull off miracles later on in the race.
And speaking of which, dropping off the back of your leading duo is Florian Kamar. They've finally shaken him away. And right now it's the top two after the opening round of the championship. Your two favourites, A and A1, in P1 and 2. Kamar has got a lot of work to do now to bring himself back into this group. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the likes of Kamar come into the pits. He runs a little bit wide off of Borgo San Lorenzo. And now down the hill through Casanova, through Savelli, and through the Arrabbiata corners. It's always watch out through this section. You can just take a look over the last 3 laps to see that lap 14 wasn't great. He lost nearly 7/10 of a second by comparison to Jacob Reed, and it's a consistent 2/10 at this point, at the critical juncture of this opening stint.
Yeah, perhaps when we were talking about drivers that are really losing pace on these mediums really this early into the race, it should have been Florian Kamar that we were talking about, as he just doesn't look comfortable on the mediums right now, just struggling to get the car turned in, especially into all of the high-speed sections. And it looks like he's having to lift out the throttle so much just to get the car through a corner, which in qualifying is absolutely flat out. But with all that fuel on board, all that temperature in the tires, they're just getting to the point where they've got absolutely nothing left to give.
Yeah, they're at that stage where you're looking around. Bernstorff, by comparison, did a 121.5, so Kamar just lost 7/10 of a second to the car behind as Volta looks, dove down the inside on the timing tower and took a place away. Now Connor Pula is going to dive into the pits then and be the next driver looking to make that call. Now, I'm going to be interested here to see where Connor Pula comes out. It's just a 60-kilometre-an-hour pit lane in comparison to Jorge Martinez, who has been out there just putting in the quiet laps. Martinez is just coming up the straight right now, and now just leaving the box there with the damaged and wrecked car of George Van Rensburg. Martinez has found a mile by comparison to Connor Pula. I think Jorge Martinez can jump the entire lot.
It's going to be really interesting, because he isn't really setting the timing screens alight. He's doing it relative to everyone he was racing out there on track. I know he's going to gain positions out of this early switch onto the softs, but he's barely matching the top 3. Emil Bernstorff even down in the 20.6s, but that's best lap. But for Martinez, his best is the 20.1, and he's only in the 20.6s now. It's within a second of everyone, well, almost a second above everyone. But again, those soft tires are eventually going to die, especially with the 28 Celsius track temps and the really high cornering loads.
Yeah, that track has gone up 6 degrees since the race has started. So it shows you there's a lot of movement out there as they change again for 4th position. You can see that track temperature. It wobbled and then it rose quite rapidly up through the degrees. And in comes Paul O'Regan then to make a pit stop. And I want to highlight him and the way that he's raced, because he is yet to have a retirement in this series. He will say he barrel rolled the car at Montreal back in 2023, which certainly cost him, but he finished within 90%, so it still counts as a championship finish. But the consistency he has to be 30 races out of 46, he's almost batting 75% for a top 10 finish.
And that's so hard to do, because these cars are very, very difficult to drive. They are the fastest road course cars in iRacing. The amount of speed they carry through the corners just unmatched by anything else in the service. So as Paul O'Regan comes out on those soft compound tires, it takes a lot of mental energy to not only get these cars around one single lap, but to do that for staring down the barrel of 90 minutes straight, and then to also finish every race reclassified in every race that you've taken part in. As much as O'Regan has never really been a shining star of the championship, he's certainly been one of those drivers that you look at and it's like, wow, you can just rock up and finish races. That is something that's very difficult to do.
It's incredibly difficult to do, and it's why he scores so fantastically in his points. 13th in the championship last year as he continues on. Now, I do want to point, Edward Apariari is down in the pits, but I also want to keep my eye on Norton Motta at the moment because he's now lost places to Ricciuti and Piazza on the hards. The hard tyres starting to come into their own.
Well, this is something we always expect a little bit later on in the race as we get that bit of tyre crossover where the hards start to have a better peak pace than the mediums, because those mediums have been on these cars for almost 20 laps at this point, and they're really going to start to have lost their edge. It's why we see that crossover, because those hards are just so much more durable. You can get that pace out of them for so much longer. But it's a shame, though, that my bold prediction has gone completely out the window, Sperry. I'm quite disappointed about that.
Well, Edward Apariari's come out of the pits behind Brad Newman and behind as well one Mr. Jorge Martinez. Martinez, with that early jump at the pit stop, it's going to be net 4th.
But how long's that soft tyre going to last? He's been on it for 7 laps so far, and with the mediums only going 20 or so, I usually predict that there's about a 50% extra distance jump in the pace between each tyres. So Martinez is going to be approaching the end of the tyre life of those tyres relatively soon. And with everyone else that's coming out behind him on much fresher tyres, he's going to lose a lot of those spots that he's gained, as Walter Lux is still in that scrap for 3rd with Emil Bernstorff.
Florian Kammeier out of the pits, in comes Jason Green, and Kammeier comes out just behind Lyle Pienaar out on circuit. So that might be the domino that causes the leaders to fall here on lap 21 from the back of Walter Lux through Savelli and through the 2 Arrabbiata corners here. The corners closest to Rome out there. Conor Pooler with the fastest lap of the race then as he sets a 19.8, and when you consider what they were doing in qualifying of 15.8, that extra fuel, 4 seconds difference here on the lap times by just how much they have to put into the cars as we watch Walter Lux here through the Corin tyre.
And these two are going to be thinking about Florian Kammeier, who has just come out of the pit lane. Oh, there you go. There are the leaders. So they have blinked. I was going to say it'd be quite interesting to see what they do, because Kammeier is currently stuck behind Lyle Pienaar, who hasn't pitted yet. And I thought that might be a bit of a blocker as Walter Lux also comes down pit lane, and a reason to kind of wait on that first pit stop. But as you can see, everyone's choosing to blink except for Emil Bernstorff, who is going to lead a lap of the race here at Mugello.
Jacob Reed missed his box. That's going to cost him huge, but I think he got away with it with the lane transit times. So they're going to all go away. Both Radice and Reed didn't have the best times out there in the world. Watch out on the straight. Ken Nielsen's going to be there with Nacho Gaspar, and Kammeier is just going to be short. Radice has got 2 cars between himself and Jacob Reed. A critical moment in the race.
And that's exactly what those sort of mistakes cost you. Reed now has to fight through Gaspar and Nielsen as Kammeier goes off through turns 2 and 3 and almost comes back onto the track. Backwards, he's going to have to scramble to rejoin the race, and he's going to drag so much gravel onto the surface of the circuit. That slippery surface flag is going to fly, and our drivers are going to have to take care for a lap or so now.
Yeah, Luco being the corner which catches Kammeier out. He had to try and drag the car out at Poggio Secco to go and get himself forward. We'll take a look at this. It was such an important moment for Florian Kammeier. He realised he had a chance. He might have just caught the anti-cut curb on the inside. It's so innocuous as he went through, and you drop a car like that when you're contending for the race victory. It's one mistake that he'll certainly look back on and go, oh, that was a chance for me to get into this race. He goes through, oh, he just drops it. He just purely drops it, Taylor.
It's those curbs. They are absolutely deadly. I think they're a lot slippier than everyone's expecting as Emil Bernstorff comes down pit lane for the first time. You could see that as soon as he got on that inside curb, the car just gets bounced around. The aero seal underneath the car gets broken, and the back end just came around on him like there was absolutely nothing holding it to the ground. It's a rare mistake from Kammeier, but it's certainly one of those that can happen at a track like this. As down the inside goes Walter Lux, who was pulled one heck of a gap on Emil Bernstorff, who only comes out in 9th place.
Yep, so Bernstorff here loses out by staying out a little bit longer. So work to be done to claw that back. But now look at the race lead here. Eduardo Radice has got to clear the two hard runners here of Ricciuti and Piazza down the inside at Scarperia. He gets through Doriano Ricci.
He's going to pick up the DRS as well. Was exactly what he needed at this stage of the race. For that net lead, the gap is up at 1.3 seconds, but a lap or so ago, it was as big as 2. What a move from Reed.
And that was with the fastest lap of the race, going around the outside of 2 cars at Boosing Corner. Jacob Reed is on a hunt for 21 race victories here in the iRacing Grand Prix Tour, and he will not rest until he catches the back of Eduardo Radice.
But where have we seen this before, Sperry? Where have we seen Jacob Reed hammering a set of soft tyres really early on in the stint? It didn't work out for him last time, but he's really hoping it's going to work this time. That soft compound tyre is so fragile. It's so sensitive to heat buildup. And I'm thinking with the way he's been driving it, it's what's going to cost him the race again, as the gap is just under a second.
I'm looking at Jorge Martinez here, and I think he's going to be due soon to come down into the pits. He's really struggling on his tyres, 21.6 on that last lap. Connor Pooler behind him did a 120.4 and was 1.2 seconds quicker on that last go. Still waiting for Nacho Gaspar, Ken Nielsen, Doriano Ricciuti, Danilo Piazza, and I believe Brad Newman to come down into the pits. So 5 drivers who are all going to be due, and also Adam Webb, who's now dropped way down the order now towards the rear. He'll have work to do, but Martinez, this is where you got to pay the Pied Piper back. If you pit early and gain the track position, the cars with fresh tyres after you've pitted, they're going to come screaming by looking for places, and that again is going to be a factor as we look on in at this. Up the hill towards San Donato once more. Connor Pooler, easy as you like.
And Martinez just absolutely not fighting it, knowing that right now that is not his race. He just needs to get the tyres to the end of the stint he wants to do and really settle into his strategy. I think it was a bit of a bold call to take softs that early, as Byrne is looking to get by in any way possible to try and get back on the back of Pooler. But I think the choice from Martinez certainly wasn't the best one. Wide at turns 4 and 5, and down the inside goes Byrne. And again, Martinez just lets it happen.
He does, and James Burns actually lost out quite a little bit there in that first pit stop, because he's behind Connor Pooler and he's trying to stay with Apari Arie and Emil Bernstorff, so he's really dropped out by comparison. He's got work to do on this stint. He came in on lap 21 for his pit stop, so he only dropped the 1 lap. They just a little bit quicker as they went on by. Now for your race lead, they chase up the hill once again. Jacob Reed is now in range. He took 1.1 seconds on that last lap, 2 laps ago, then 4 tenths, then 3 tenths, then lunges down the inside of Eduardo Radice and looks to steal back the race lead, but Radice keeps his nose in for Luco Corner. They'll fight now through Poggio Secco, but around the outside to command the inside. Jacob Reed leads again.
I think that was a smart move from Radice to just back out in the middle of the 2 and 3 chicane there and let Reed just go to the lead for a little bit. Reed has been suffering in that dirty air a little bit. Of course, the DRS helping him get back close to Radice. But now he's going to have a chance to let those tyres cool down a little bit and try and bring them back into the window. That has to be his #1 priority right now as he tries to hold on to the lead against Eduardo Radice, who I think has his tyres in a much better window at the moment.
Jacob Reed, the all-time points leader in the iRacing Grand Prix Tour, on his run to second place last time out at Phillip Island. He scored exactly career point number 800 in this championship. Incredible for the 41 starts he has had in his iRacing Grand Prix Tour career. A driver who has romped away with the championship last year, had to fight on a reduced schedule against Marcel Fassbender in 2023, and now Eduardo Radice looks like he's going to be the nearest challenger with no Jordan Gronkowski this season.
Yeah, look as the gap just closes. Radice looking to the inside. They're going to be side by side once again through turn 1. It's the exact opposite situation we saw a lap ago, but Radice just doesn't have the momentum off that first corner to get around the outside of 2, as Jacob Reed is going to hold on brilliantly. Great bit of defensive driving from your race leader.
Yeah, some wonderful battling then that brings itself forward. Watch out for Volta Lux's group, though, as Marquez now dives in for his second stop of the race. They're stuck behind two runners here of Ken Nielsen and Nacho Gaspar, so you've got hards versus mediums versus softs versus softs.
And that's what's going to make it a little bit difficult to try and make anything happen. We talked about all those bottlenecks in the first stint as they're going to continue with the same drivers. And they are just absolutely stuck right now because Nielsen and Gaspar still have that straight line speed as Lux having a peak to the inside into 10. Can't make anything of it. But Gaspar on those mediums really struggling to hang on to the mid-corner speed as Lux going down the inside of 12, maybe. Ooh, just pulls up alongside mid-corner and then gets some momentum, squeezes the throttle. The softs are giving him everything he needs as Gaspar just rolls backwards.
The car and tyre is one of the opportunistic places to make that move, and he just threw the car in at the middle of the corner, sensing that the gap was there by Nacho Gaspar, couldn't quite cut it off, and now Emil Bernstorff joins this group in the race for the podium out there right now. Move going to be done then by Volta Lux. He gets through on Kent Nielsen, but you look behind, and Kammeyer is just placid by comparison to Bernstorff. Now they're going to fight for the exit against Gaspar. Bernstorff plants the throttle down and gets them both.
Oh, goodness me. That is so cool to see. I love the bits of different tyre strategy that we've got going on right now that leave cars in these different positions as Kammeyer tries to have a go around the outside and does make it stick. Two cars around the outside of Gaspar as he's going to have to back out down into turn 6. Those early life softs really playing magic for Kammeyer and Bernstorff right now. Two brilliant moves in the space of a sector.
That's huge there for Kammeyer, who needed that done, confirmed it at Casanova, and Edward Apariari now joins the group and looks for each and every way he can to get the move done on Gaspar, who of course is still yet to pit in this race and is trying to make it to at least half distance, if not to 66%, and that will give him the soft tyre all the way to the end on this one. Apariari trying to line this up. You can see the rain light flashing as they harvest. Race lead changes as Eduardo Radiz is through back into the race lead. He got it done at San Donato. They're down looking to only make the charge up the hill at the moment as Apariari sees in front the battling. He's going to get that move sorted, but Kammeyer's going to find his way through on Kent Nielsen, and now he'll look to try and attack again, will Kammeyer here against Emil Bernstorff, but again, Bernstorff runs the outside line on a tightrope.
I cannot believe the pace we're seeing out of Kammeyer at this stage, though. Obviously, we saw him up there in third earlier on in the race before that spin, but he is now absolutely hounding the rear end of Emil Bernstorff, who just cannot shake that purple and black car behind him. Kammeyer absolutely where he needs to be right now to try and recover as many spots as he can. As Sperry, I'm still seeing Ricciuti and Piazza out on those hard compound tires in third and fourth right now. When are they going to pit?
I would say they'll be angling for about lap 35 onwards, so I'd say 6 more laps for them to try and do so, but they're now going to be at the front of this train coming forward with Lux, with the likes, of course, behind him of Bernstorff and Kammeyer trying to get through, and then Apariari trying to jump through with James Byrne. So that's going to be what we stare down the barrel of next, and Danilo Piazza here on home soil is going to look around. He will see Volta Lux go there and move to that inside, but ultimately it's a case up the hill towards San Donato corner once more. There's not much you can fight with if you're Danilo Piazza. And Ricciuti left the door agape and allowed through Volta Lux. So Lux up into third position. He was fourth a year ago here, and now he's looking for a podium.
And I think this is the first warning shot for those two cars on the hard compound tire, because they are now starting to lose time to cars that they're going to be losing time to anyway in the pit stop cycle. They need to stay within that window. They'll be able to do it once they switch onto a fresher compound tire and start to turn those laps again. But right now, it's a really important stage for Ricciuti, for Piazza, to start to really think about when they need to come down pit lane, because it's looking like it's soon.
It is, but all the while as well, Emil Bernstorff and Florian Kamar are scrapping at San Donato each and every lap, and Florian Kamar, I think, has got a rocket ship in a straight line, but they will bring Edward Apariari into their group if they cannot clear Piazza and Ricciuti in the all-white machinery, which is there in front for their Mercedes W13. E-performances out there on track. Already Nacho Gaspar outside of the top 10 because of everybody making that progress through, and this group all there together and trying to figure out, well, just how long can we go, and are we going to be angling up for these stints together as they chase up the hill again. Piazza's where he needs to be again. Bernstorff tries the outside line. Got to look at Emil because he'll get a drive off the exit, and he'll get one again on the outside. He's the only one who makes that stick.
God, I love that so much. Obviously, Piazza's still on those really old hards and doesn't have the same pace as Emil Bernstorff right now. But with those extra grip on those little bit fresher tires, he's just able to drive around the outside of Piazza as if he's not there. He's now right under the rear wing of Ricciuti, who again is on some really old tires, and Bernstorff has the pace over these two right now, and it's a question of when, not if, and I think it's going to be in another very unexpected spot as that gap closes to only 0.2 of a second.
Yeah, and here at the Corinthio, Bernstorff again takes that wide pivoted line in. He's got a car that really hooks up well with the late turn-in apex entry that can hold the speed as he holds the outside. Bouchine now the next corner, but he wants to confirm there with that white line they've just passed the DRS. The green light on the left-hand side indicates that he's got it. At 2 lights, he'll have it available. At 4 lights, which he has now, he opens up the rear wing flap and charges then up the hill to San Donato. And Emil Bernstorff now moves himself back into 4th place.
And he was in an absolute scrap with Florian Kamaya, but Kamaya just isn't able to make that same progress through the one-stoppers right now, which is giving Bernstorff this breathing room with all this clean air in front to just start to run away. Look at Kamaya now. Look how slow he's going to be through the second sector compared to Emil Bernstorff. Turning in for 6, they are about 1.5 seconds apart. So, Sperry, keep an eye on that. Let us know how close they are at the end of Sector 2.
Yeah, and we'll take a look. It'll be around Scarperia and this next corner as well. So Scarperia the right, and then they've got to get the next left out there on track sorted, which is always going to be crucial, that being Pelagio, and then up through to the Corinthio once again, and that gap does balloon out. 1.7 seconds now the margins they go through, 1.9 seconds on the exit, so that's a half a second gone in that section. So he's lost 0.6 in the first sector, a further 0.2 in the second sector, and watch this is going to be a rocket ship that he loses in the final sector then, as well, as now he'll get the DRS and he'll be able to charge, but he's also going to bring with him Edward Apariari, who's going to try and follow and gain himself through, who struggled so late on with his tyres. That's 2 gone there by Danilo Piazza, and now James Byrne's going to try and run the outside line and get this move sorted. He runs it in a little bit deep. He can't get the pass.
Yeah, we are getting towards the stage of the stint for the soft tyres as Gaspar does come down pit lane, where they are starting to just melt off the pace a little bit. Still not to the point where the hards are magically going to come back into it, as the ones on Piazza and Ricciuti are a good, oh goodness me, 32 laps old at this point, well past halfway and well past their sell-by date, as they are just now starting to fall down that order. And I think this is where they need to start eyeing up pit lane and switch onto the mediums and get those to the end of the race. The softs are just too far.
Yeah, it's very tough from here because they've got 27 laps worth of racing to try and get a set of soft tyres home. So Nacho Gaspar has it all to do. Radice closes again to 0.2 of a second on Jacob Reed in the number 2 car out there for the second highest I rating in the field at 7,800. He's been a member of the 8,000 club in iRacing, the top 1% of all iRacers, and on top of that, a former pro stripe in the Turn Racing Grand Prix iRacing series, which ran itself in 2023 and 2022, sorry, and a driver who is, by all measures and metrics, a driver that you've got to keep your eyes out on in terms of racing. The Worcesterman is looking to wish a race win back into his pocket.
It's funny you should bring up Worcester, considering apparently Worcestershire sauce crisps are coming back from Walker's. Other crisp brands are available. I got to say, I'm very excited about that. I love that flavor of crisps. But yeah, Reed is doing an absolutely stellar job right now, especially to keep those softs alive when he really pushed them at the start of the stint, which didn't work out so well for him in round one. He's just been able to take advantage of that clean air, drive the car exactly how it needs to be driven in this middle stage of the stint, and just keep Radice a little bit out of the range to really make an attack, as Radice is closing now under DRS but can't get close enough to make a move. Reed doesn't even have to think about it as a defense because he's just that far ahead when it comes to the DRS zone.
And here's something we haven't actually considered here so far. They're 20 seconds clear of third place right now, which is Volta Lux.
I mean, it's just 2021 Formula One all over again, right?
It might be too clear at the front. They're not teammates of any kind, so they are just trying to get as much pace as they can out of it. And speaking of moves, that's James Byrne getting the pass done on Edward Apariari up at the top of San Donato, the highest section of the circuit. And that pass is good enough for James to move up now into P6, which is for him a gain now of 4 spots in this race and doing exactly what's needed. Still 3 yet to make their stops. Ricciuti, Piazza and Kent Nielsen, and moves being made as Paul O'Regan gets the Norton Motta through on Lyle Pienaar for position. Good work by James Byrne at the moment, and he's proving he's going to be a consistent point scorer this season.
And you got to give him some credit for that move as well. It was around the outside of turn 1, a spot where he struggled to make a move a lap prior. But apparently he was taking notes. He learned exactly what he did wrong there. And the next time he had the opportunity to get it done, he was like, right, this much brake pressure, this much turn-in, this much throttle application, and it was exactly what he needed to get right around the outside of that 13 car and make that move up into P6. He's going to have DRS on Florian Kammeyer as he's now eyeing up the German to try and get himself up into that top 5 spot.
Yeah, if he wants that top 5, he's going to have to wrest it away from Florian Kammeyer. And James Byrne has certainly been proving, as the New Englander, that he is trying to get himself up as far as he can. Apariari there behind us. Ricciuti and Piazza change places in front of Connor Pooler out there for their positions through the Poggio Secco. And now looking over towards this next section, we go to Danilo Piazza out to the Poggio Secco, and now down to Materazzi corner and the Borgo San Lorenzo, and this dramatic drop. This might be one of the prettiest corners in all of the world here, Taylor, here down through Casanova.
Yeah, it's as George Russell would say, it's flat round here as they are pinning the throttle of that Mercedes to try and carry as much speed through there as possible. It's a little bit of it screws with your brain a little bit when it comes to driving a car like this, because the faster you go, the more speed you're going to be able to carry through a corner, and you just have to trust that it's going to stick through the Arrabbiatas. It's of course been a case for these two so far, but we keep coming back to the tyres, Sperry. I think they're getting to a point where they are really going to start to give up, as you can see Connor Pooler in the background there, who is trying to make up those spots and get himself up into the top 8.
Yeah, he'll certainly be looking around, and those Arrabbiata corners, it really is a game of chicken over at that section of track, Taylor, which you'd know, of course, for your dinner.
I knew you'd drop that on me at some point. Instead goes Ricciuti down the inside of Danilo Piazza, down into turn 1. It's a spot we've seen moves made all race long so far. Big assistance from opening the rear flap with that DRS, as actually I think it looks like Ricciuti has a bit of a pace advantage over Piazza right now, as he's starting to just walk away a little bit in this first sector.
Yeah, it's very important to try and keep your nerve through here as we go with Connor Pooler as he looks here in 10th position. 1 Sim Speed Championship point here. He sees an extra 3 in the distance. You get 2 for 9th. You get 4 points for 8th place if you can get by them both. So Connor Pooler, this is for these points. And because they haven't pitted and there's 1 pit stop remaining for all of these drivers remaining in this race, we'd expect this is full position out there on track.
Oh, it's got to be. Pooler is absolutely stuck right now because he's only got to the back of these 2 cars when his softs are absolutely gone. And I've got a question, Sperry. I know we don't have team liveries in iRacing on this car, but it can't be a coincidence that Piazza and Ricciuti are running the same livery on the car and running the same strategy as Paula does decide his softs are done and comes down pit lane.
Yeah, 2 Italians in all white. I would say they're teammates out there working together to get that result, and Ricciuti doesn't see Piazza go through. So Connor Pula in with Paul O'Regan 10 seconds behind, diving into the pits. O'Regan with a further pit stop back compared to some of the others there, and he'll look to go. But Pula, once more, a set of soft tyres to try and bring himself home, and he'll have about 22 laps to go and manage that. The question now in the final stages of this race is not it's not if you pit, it's when you pit. Brad Newman now also comes in. So the drivers at the back are guinea pigs for everybody at the front.
And I can't lie, I'm pulling a bit of a face in the booth right now. I'm really questioning that decision from Paula. Yes, the track temp is a little bit colder than it was at the start of the race. Yes, the cars are a lot lighter than they were at the start of the race, but he was only able to take the medium 17 laps, and he's now bolting on a set of the softs to go 22. To me, the math ain't mathing on that one. I don't know if he's going to be able to make that work with any sort of pace.
Well, here's the thing you've got to remember as well here, Taylor. When you've got these cars at the start of the race, they're heavy, they're full of fuel. You can't refuel in this series. What happens when you take the fuel out? It means that the car's lighter. It means you get less lateral load that goes through the tyres through each corner, and you get less tyre wear.
That's definitely the case, but is it going to be enough to keep the softs alive for 22 laps? Again, I can't really see it happening. It's a bold choice. I respect the decision, and I'm excited to see if Paula can extract the speed out for each of those 22 laps. But I think he's put himself in a very, very difficult position.
Jason Green in 4.6 seconds in the lane for him, a absolute trooper in 2023. He was the only driver to compete in each and every single iRacing Grand Prix Tour event. He only missed one last year, and he's always finding himself here trying to race. James Byrne eyeing up Florian Kammer. That gap at almost a second as they now look to run and try and find their next moves. They come out then of the Corantaio through the 2 lefts and rights there at the Biondettis, and now it's this run through Bucine, which gives you that chance. At 0.8 of a second, James Byrne will be happy. He's got DRS along this long front stretch up the hill to San Donato, but into the pits comes Kamaya.
Kamaya stealing away the chance to watch another awesome overtake down into turn 1 from James Byrne as the Piazza and Ricciuti come down pit lane for the first, and we suspect only time. The question is, what tyres are they going to bolt on as they're just coming to a stop in the box now? It should be a set of softs to get to the end. Actually, Piazza has just ran his box deep a little bit. It is going to be a set of the softs. Let's see if they made the strategy work.
So Piazza actually lost out to Ricciuti because of that overrun of the box. Kamaya comes out, and he'll come out just in front of Jorge Martinez, who, of course, remember, is trying a 3-stop strategy here today. So Martinez is going to be in a world of hurt. 3 was not the call here today at Mugello.
I certainly don't think it was. He's about at the end of the stint he did on the last tour. So let's see if he comes down pit lane this time and bolts on another fresh set of softs. It looks like that's going to be his only option. But like I say, the cars that I'm keeping my eye on right now is still the likes of Ricciuti, who has, done that 1-stop strategy, which I was still looking forward to seeing if someone would do. But it still looks like that 2-stop was absolutely the way to go. As we've talked about it so far, the leaders are absolutely zooming 24 seconds clear of P3, as is that Lux coming down pit lane and Byrne moving up to 3rd.
Yeah, and he's followed by Bernstorff, and he's followed by Apariari. So James Byrne stays out longer, and these drivers all looking for a quick run towards the end of this race. Ken Nielsen, by the way, still yet to pit on lap 41.
That is more than a little bit shocking. Is he on the hards?
Yes.
Yes, he is. Up there in 4th place on a set of hard tyres he's had on since lap 1. This is an Alex Albon style performance at this point. I kind of expect him to come down pit lane this time by as he threads his way through the first sector. There is Kent Nielsen still out there on the hards. He's 40 seconds behind the leaders.
In.
Yeah, there you
So
go. Down the pit lane come leaders.
And I just took a look at where the times are. It was so aggressive by Eduardo Radice on the line. He had to when it came to making that stop because Jacob Reed was threatening to break a second as they take the long trundle down to their boxes. And now it's about where you go. Does Jacob Reed hit his marks perfectly this time? Yes, he does. Up on the jacks, off the jacks, and now he'll get the drive. But again, he doesn't go. Slow clutch as he tried to go away. Was he trying to save and stay behind to see what was going on with Radice?
And there is your change of lead then. Reed, who has been dominant in the second phase of this race, loses the lead in the pit stop cycle. A full second slower than Eduardo Radice in the pit box. The race of the pit crews, it's Reed that lost out as he's now going to work really hard to make that time back up.
I think Jacob Reed just triggered the anti-stall. There's no other explanation for it. He had all the revs but no gear.
And that'll do it. The car is just going to absolutely refuse to move and pull that clutch back in and won't go anywhere until you manually override, pull your clutch back in, and then try and get the car rolling again. 1.3 seconds is the gap. We know Reed has the pace over Radice on these soft tires. Here comes the replay for you as we watch Reed roll off pit lane. So into the box he comes. Oh,
he tries to get the drive. He goes up to second gear, and he just gets nothing there, Taylor.
No, that was absolutely the anti-stall kicking in. It's something you can do in iRacing to try and make the car get out of the pit box or off the grid a little bit better. Just use those higher gears to try and limit the wheel spin, because the clutch wear, the clutch burn is just so much more reduced in sim than it is in real life. But Jacob Reed already within a second of Eduardo Radice, who had absolutely no DRS on the start-finish straight. But Adam Webb just lending a bit of a helping hand to your second place driver right now.
And that was crucial for Jacob Reed because he knows that brings him back in range. The lap traffic is there, but now the range gone again. 1 second. It is exactly on the dot as in comes Jorge Martinez for his final pit stop of the race. And he will look to try and salvage any points he possibly can here from Mugello, the second round of the championship. Jacob Reed on the hunt in the final stages of your race here at Mugello.
And it's something that we've seen before, and this time he's in a much better spot to try and make that work. He hasn't overdriven the tires in the first phase of the stint. He looks like he's really bringing this last set of softs in nice and gently to make sure he's got something at the end of this race. Radice, though, on this lap has been so much quicker. He's actually managed to break the DRS window. So Jacob Reed will be left without the advantage of opening that rear flap this time down the start-finish straight, as he's now got to really push to get back within that window for the final, 10, 15 laps of this race?
That's the fastest lap of the race from Eduardo Radice at possibly the most critical time of this one here at Mugello. And that lap of an 18.4 beats an 18.5 of Jacob Reed, who is throwing everything he can at it. But it's almost a carbon copy of what we saw at Phillip Island. Eduardo Radice in the final stint will break Jacob Reed's spirit in any way he can. Now we look back here to Volta Lux because the podium is not settled. It's Austria versus Germany, and Florian Kammeyer has got himself his second wind.
And yeah, he has done a great job to recover from that spin in that second stint, as he is absolutely putting the pressure on Walter Lux, just able to stay within that window in this really quick second sector around Mugello. Both of them flat out through the Arabiatas. Up the hill they come again. Kammeyer getting a little bit of slipstream through those corners as well. Easy flat, becomes slipstream. Window at about half a second, so well within the chance to get that DRS this time by. It's a bit deep into a 12 for Kammeyer, but he's still close enough to get that rear wing open down into turn one.
He is, and Florian Kammerer will use that as Radice again, 18 flat on that lap, really throws it at Jacob Reed, who's 18.3, was good enough for the fastest lap, were it not for Radice's advances. But now here comes Florian Kammerer in the number 12, looking for this space on the podium. He thought he threw it away through Luco and Poggio Secco in the mid part of the race, but that move straight up into San Donato puts him on the podium.
Yeah, really taking advantage of having that DRS this time by straight up the inside of one, gets it done before the braking zone, pulls the car up perfectly to the apex of the first corner, and now it's Kammerer who's throwing the dirty air back at Volta Lux. But we know how fast Lux can be in the final phases of a race. The driver in fourth is not going to be giving up on that podium yet. He's only half a second back on Florian Kammerer, but what a recovery from him so far.
And speaking of drivers looking at recoveries, Nacho Gaspar's just lost 9th place to Doriano Ricciuti, and Paul O'Regan, by the way, who is in 11th place, he's got 7 of those in his career as well, is eyeing up Gaspar or Ricciuti for any mistakes, and that will put him for his 31st top 10 finish.
And that is absolutely insane to think about. He's got some work to do before he gets anywhere near that. Nacho Gaspar about a second off the back of Doriano Ricciuti at the moment, and not really making any sort of inroads right now, as he's on average about 0.4 of a second slower than Ricciuti over the course of the last 3 laps or so, as it looks like the driver of that 21 seems to have the pace advantage over Gaspar.
Yeah, and now that's Volta Lux who retakes the place at San Donato. So they are going to scrap every lap. It might just be a case of who's got what out there. And keep an eye on Jacob Reed. He's taken a couple laps, but that gap is back to 1.2 seconds out there on track. He took 0.3 out of Eduardo Radice on the last lap.
So my question is then, are we seeing a reverse of Phillip Island, where it's actually Eduardo Radice who's taken too much out of his final set of tyres in the early phase of the last stint and can't have anything to fight with at the end? It's a question we're going to have to wait for in terms of getting it answered. Gap between these two up at 1.1 seconds. Reed will be feeling a little bit of slipstream on this 1.1 kilometer blast down towards turn 1, but it's not going to be enough to make significant inroads on Radice. It's going to all have to be done through that first and second sector.
Just remember, if it comes down to the final lap, that finish line comes up quick when they get over there. So it does favour the driver who leads going into the final corner. So you feel like you've got to get it done at the start of the final lap if you favour that move and overtake. And there's a look from Florian Kammerer, but it's not there. And they'll be a little bit wary to playing games here in this group, because Emil Bernstorff sits at just 3 seconds off the back of Volta Lux in 3rd place. So Bernstorff still with an outside shot of the podium, just needs a little bit of help.
I think it's going to be a case of these two having an incident, because right now they are looking so much quicker than Bernstorff. I think in terms of absolute pace, they are relatively safe. Bernstorff needs to find a little bit of something once he's cleared Adam Webb to start putting that pressure on, because right now Lux and Kammerer just aren't fighting each other perhaps as hard as they should be as we come into the final 10 laps of this, and it's just not giving Bernstorff the chance to close up and really start to get himself involved in the fight.
Well, if he wants to get himself in this fight, he's going to have to try and find some pace. 1:20.0 on that last lap. Kammerer 20.0. Lux with the overtake 19.2. So Bernstorff's not doing enough at the moment to pull himself into this scrap and to give himself the opportunity. He'll get DRS off of Adam Webb on this run up the hill. So that will give him a little bit of something as in comes Adam Webb to make a pit stop. But Lux here as he crests the rise again. He's got the gap here on the likes of Florian Kammerer, who I think is trying to burn that battery to get close, but again, not close enough.
And I think what's really helping these two at the moment, though, is Kammerer's lack of pace through that final corner. I've just been following him for this last lap or so, and it's really in 15 where he doesn't seem to be able to get the car turned in that dirty air as well as Walter Lux can, with absolutely no one in front of him. And he's just dropping outside of that window where it really makes that overtake not only possible, but almost guaranteed. He seems quicker even in the first sector than Lux, but once they get down to this chicane here and then through this final sector is just when he starts to drop off a little bit. So I'm thinking that Kamaya just has that car trimmed out a little bit more than Volta looks.
Oh, it's been a big issue for Lyle Pinar. He's taken a massive amount of netcode contact going through at Luca to Poggio Secco, and it's dropped him 2 places.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to get a replay of that one as he goes very wide at that second chicane to find out exactly how Pinar ended up off the circuit. It's a really unfortunate point in the race to go off. Here comes that replay. That's Jorge Martinez in the background there. Pinar around the outside of turn 1, I think on either Piazza or Ricciuti. Down into turn 2 they go, forced to the inside. Wow, that is a huge amount of netcode contacts. There was a car width between both of those cars there.
Well, this is the thing. We've been talking about this iRacing netcode and what it does. The way that it hits and the worst way it hits is through fast corners out there on track and, of course, with high speeds. And that section of the road is very difficult for predictions to try and do. It's one of the pitfalls of racing on the internet, and you see it there with Lyle Pinar. Sometimes it does happen, but nothing he can do about that. 3 retirees then from this race, and Paul O'Regan is in the top 10 again through on Nacho Gaspar.
There is your people's champion, everyone. Paul O'Regan back up into the points. Will score 1 singular sim speed championship point. But I would say more importantly, but I don't think so, Florian Kamaya has made his way back up into 3rd place. Finally got the car turned in for 15. Finally got advantage of the straight line speed into turn 1. Volta looks though only 3/10 behind with the DRS advantage. He's going to be able to take that spot back.
And look at the lead, it's now 0.2 of a second. Jacob Reed is absolutely flying out on track. He's taken 3/10. That's what your iRacing, your SimSpeed Championship, looks. On the right-hand side, Radice currently would hold a 14-point championship lead, walking to Suzuka next week. But it's close here with Jacob Reed, because if they trade, it's a 14-point swing, and they go dead level.
And did I not call it, Sperry? Radice just taken too much out of his tyres, and that's what's given Reed the chance to get right under his rear wing. 0.3 of a second is what the gap stands at. Get ready for that 14-point swing, because it is coming down into turn 1 this time by. DRS is available. The rear wing flap for Jacob Reed is open as the speed builds and builds and builds. Radice can do absolutely nothing. Reed to the outside, harvesting energy already, and up into the lead of this race, and all he has to do now is run.
Well, he's got to hold, and that's the key, because this next lap, by the time they get themselves into position, is crucial. Out of the Poggio Secco, and now to the next section, the Materazzi corner here, this fast left, and then the even quicker right as they exit the Borgo San Lorenzo. Down the hill they look now to Casanova, and that gap up to 0.7 of a second, and you can really tell that the dirty air for Jacob Reed makes a huge difference for Eduardo Radice, and how he looks to fold and find it. But if you're Radice, you don't have to make that move now. If anything, I'd argue end of 58, start of 59. That's when you're circling it in the diary.
Yeah, weirdly, the pressure is off a little bit for Radice now, as he just needs to try and figure out, again, how this car handles in dirty air this late on in the race. He's still within the DRS window. He's still going to have a chance to get back up to Jacob Reed, and he's still going to have a chance at this race victory. It's just going to come a little bit later on in this one.
And Paul O'Regan there will look behind at the hard-charging Kent Nielsen out there on track, and that for the top 10. A driver with the most starts in series history, Kent Nielsen, will be looking around and thinking, what do I have to do to ruin the day of Paul O'Regan here for that top 10, as he looks to try and go in. And keep an eye out as well on what's going on for 4th place, because Emil Bernstorff has quietly walked his way to the back of the podium scrap, and that certainly isn't done and dusted at this moment. Up the hill, San Donato reveals itself once again. Bernstorff closing, but remember, Emil likes that outside line. The inside might not be the best place to defend.
8 laps to go in this race, and we have 3 active battles out there on track still. One of them featuring 3 of the fastest drivers in the entire iRacing Grand Prix Tour field. But back down in P10, the scrap for 10, Kent Nielsen, again taking advantage of the DRS, is straight around the outside of Paul O'Regan way before they get to the corner, as a million hearts break to see the 10 car drop out of the 10th place spot in this field.
Well, 121.8 did that on lap number 50 for Paul O'Regan as he sat up and allowed through then at the opening section the pass that needed to be done on Nacho Gaspar to make that move. So he finds himself in that group trying to find it at San Donato. It doesn't get much closer. Eduardo Radiz almost up the rear diffuser there of Jacob Reed. He's showing he's got a bit of fight left.
I think the weird thing is he's starting to look just a touch desperate, maybe scrabbling to try and get that lead position back. Reed's feeling it a little bit, a touch wide on the exit of 5 as he flicks it back down the hill and just using all that clean air to carry all the speed. But through all these really quick corners, it is allowing Radice to just catch up with that slipstream, as I think he just needs to take a little bit of a breath now and set himself up for the final few laps of this race, because we're nearly there, Sperry. He's running out of opportunities, but he needs to make sure he can get it done.
Keep an eye out on the right side there for about 3rd, 4th and 5th, because Volta Lux, who's on 15 championship points here, could drop 5, and Emil Bernstorff could gain 5 out there if he goes through. Kamar making great gains in the championship as well, making that progress as we took a live look at those points too. So there's still so much that can be unlocked, won or lost in the final stages of this second round. This will go all year, this championship, and these drivers in the early salvos who are trying to build margin at the beginning of this season realize that every race is going to be hard fought for at every single position through Bucine once again, and Volta Lux just hopes that he's got enough drive against Florian Kamar behind again.
Well, let's have a look. Is Kamai going to have to defend from Bernstorff down into turn 1? Doesn't look like it. Kamai's sight set squarely on that 3rd place spot. Kamai around the outside with that DRS advantage yet again is able to sweep in front before the apex of turn 1, as it's now Lux who's got to keep an eye on Bernstorff behind, as Kamai in that clean air can start to just walk away a little bit, and that's certainly what he's doing.
Yeah, and he's trying to just build that gap. He runs a little wide, though, as he comes off the exit there of the Borgo San Lorenzo, and that now brings through Casanova, through Savelli, through the 2 Arrabbiata corners. The fact that Volta Lux is still there and Emil Bernstorff is still there in the groups right now, and still Eduardo Radice plays a factor in the final stages of this race at the front. They'll be down to 5 laps to go here at Mugello. Jacob Reed holds his margin here at the front of the field, but Radice happily closing in, but saving enough out there. Black flag for Jorge Martinez. He's hit the instant point limit.
And it's so easy to do here at Mugello. We haven't really had the chance to talk about the track limits at this circuit, but they can be so unforgiving. And Jorge Martinez, who's coming off the back of a great race at Phillip Island, it's just been an absolute disaster over here in Italy for him, as he's going to have to come down pit lane and serve a drive-through with only 5 laps left to go in this race.
17 instant points is a drive-through penalty here. It's then 8 instant points after that, as it really hurts. There's been a change for 3rd. Looked back through on Florian Kamar, so they have changed and chopped once again in that scrap as they go out of the Borgo San Lorenzo, down through at Casanova, and now Emil Bernstorff's going to be a rash here over the likes of Florian Kamar, trying desperately to gain that place back.
And it's funny how much we always see that gap open up after the likes of Lux or Kamaya make that move. But then look how much they're just able to close back in through that really fast Nyon flat out section, keep themselves in that DRS window and give themselves a shot at going back through down into turn 1. I think it's going to be a big ask of Florian Kamaya to get back up into 3rd place on this lap, as he's going to have to keep his eyes squarely in those rear view mirrors, because Emil Bernstorff, 0.3 of a second back, is threatening.
I'm keeping an eye here on Eduardo Radice and the top speeds they were doing. It was 291, and Jacob Reed really did harvest down. He actually flicked down to 7th gear as now here comes the look, and there goes the move. Emil Bernstorff up to 4th. Kamai can't do anything about it. He falls back now into 5th position and can only watch and see what Emil Bernstorff can do for a podium against the Austrian Lux, who looks for what he can out there in this race. But I'll go back to Jacob Reed. He was at 291, his top speed, 302 in the tow for Eduardo Radice up the hill, and both of them were using no energy recovery system.
And this is the games that you can play with the hybrid system. That 160 horsepower boost is absolutely vital for launching any sort of attack or any sort of defense. And Reed and Radice want to make sure that they're both set up for any sort of success on the final 2 laps of this race. So they are using it a little bit now to try and close the gaps, defend whatever it is they're looking to do. But very quickly, if they keep this up, they are going to run out. But it's a good little bit of gamesmanship to see out there on track.
Radice used the whole straight of the battery to try and use, but Jacob Reed, knowing that he was safe into San Donato, was able to harvest the battery about halfway up the straight. So that gave him enough to say, well, I've done the majority of my work. I can now save a little bit more of my battery and go and defend on the other laps. And that energy recovery is about how heavy you brake through these corners, through the Arrubiatas. They go once again at half a second. Eduardo Radice can hold this gap. He is primed for a move on Jacob Reed here with 2 laps to go.
Balanced build and attack are the 3 energy modes that you get to use. Reed using that build to just hold on down into turn 1 and give himself more energy to use coming into the final 2 laps of this race. We don't know how much energy he's got saved up, but there is a chance that he has enough to go full push to the end of this race. Keep an eye on that rain light as we do come to 2 laps to go and see exactly when it starts flashing. If it's anywhere near the middle of the straight, he's still recovering, but here comes Radice.
Well, he's now got to really charge here up this hill, but again, he's not going to be close enough to make the move into San Donato, and they've got lap traffic in front of them. That's Lyle Pienaar, who's there in 16th position in this race, and they've got to clear him. If he turns up anywhere along that front stretch on the final lap of the race, that's game over, you would feel, for Eduardo Radice. It's so critical when they catch.
There is one more big opportunity for Eduardo Radice to make it by and retake the race lead, and it is down into turn 1 next time by. Just to take a peek at what's happened in 3rd though, Emil Bernstorff has managed to clear Volta Lux and is now on that bottom step of the podium. He's got no chance of catching the leaders at this stage, but he still has to defend from a very quick driver behind. But where is that traffic, Sperry?
Where is that traffic? It's still in front, and this might be vital because that gap could be everything. Jacob Reed might have DRS as he goes through. Jacob Reed's going to have DRS on the final lap of this race, and it's disastrous for Eduardo Radice, who lined it up for this final lap, but the lap traffic comes into play. Radice will look at it, and Jacob Reed on the greatest place to defend, heading to the final lap here at Mugello as Barney waves and waves. Jacob Reed, watch out, watch out. Here comes Radice down the inside of turn 1 at San Donato, and it's as close as you like. He slides. Reed holds. Reed holds. Reed holds as they go through Luco and the Poggio Secco. Oh, that was huge. He didn't get what he wanted from it, but Radice still has half a chance remaining in this race, as close as you could possibly manage it, and the gap for 3rd is still too much now, and surely Bernstorff's got what he wants. Down the hill now through Savelli, and now through the Arrubiata corners. This is where Eduardo Radice needs to run. Corantayo might be his corner. He'll try a Scarperia. Heavy defense down onto the inside, trying to save that move. It's enough. It's still enough out of Pelagio. And now at Corantayo, another little half search down to the inside. Radice is desperate here at Mugello to find something, but has he run out? He slides.
No.
He spins. It goes away from Eduardo Radice. Jacob Reed with 1 corner to go. It's going to go back to back in consecutive years here at Mugello. The road to San Donato is paved with gold for Jacob Reed. Breed, who wins at Mugello again.
Eduardo Rodis, it's only good enough for second place, but where on earth did that straight line speed come from into turn 1 on the final lap? Emil Bernstorff will bring it home in a very comfortable third place, and he gave it absolutely everything to get that car up onto the podium, and it is an absolutely deserved third place finish.
It's a stellar drive by Emil Bernstorff there. He started 12th on the grid here today, +9 to get onto the podium. Simply magnificent in the way that he conducted himself, and that will keep him very happy. And Paul O'Regan now, we watch. He can't do anything about Kent Nielsen today, and he will find himself just on the wrong side of the top 10. And for the 8th time in his iRacing Grand Prix Tour career, Paul O'Regan is 11th.
And that just feels like it's such a stab in the back, and it's gotta hurt for Paul O'Regan, who has been one of the most consistent, probably the most consistent finisher in the iRacing Grand Prix Tour. His classification record will continue here at Mugello, but unfortunately, he won't be able to nab himself a Sim Speed Championship point. But goodness gracious me, what a final lap that was. You're gonna see that final go from Eduardo Rodis. Look how far back he is. It looks like Jacob Reed didn't open the DRS. A strange choice to not actually use it on the final lap.
I think he was so locked in that battle. I think he didn't realize he had DRS, and that could have been the biggest blunder there. That's where I thought that was going to go there, with what happened through for Eduardo Rodis going up at San Donato corner, and then he had to be very tactical about where he used his battery deployment from that point onwards, because the only place he could really look next after that was Scarperia corner.
And he did have a go as well, but credit to Reed being heads up about that one to give a massive defense. We're going to be on board with Rodis where we actually see the half effort. You can see Reed harvesting all the way up the hill to try and give himself a little bit of something, as Rodis was just dumping that battery through the Arabiatas in one final attempt to get some sort of momentum and give himself a chance to get by into turn 10. But then after giving it everything, not only in the final stint, but especially on that final lap, he just loses it all. Coming out of turn 12, too much throttle input, trying to get a run into turn 15. Back end snaps around, and there's just absolutely nothing he could have done.
Nothing at all, but what an incredible drive. A battle of two titans here today around the Autodromo del Mugello. It took 1 hour, 20 minutes and 8 seconds to try and work out who would win this one. And ultimately at the line, it's Jacob Reed. But do not be deceived. 5.8 seconds is not an accurate gap for race-winning margin that declares just how close that one was going the other way. Rodis in second. They'll be tied on SimSpeed Championship points heading to round 3, with Emil Bernstorff rounding out the final spot on the podium. It'll be Walter Lux who would put himself in fourth, with Florian Kammeyer, the last driver inside the top 5. He had a chance of the podium today, showed great early pace. James Byrne will find himself 6th ahead of Edward Apari RE, with Connor Pooler in 8th place. A great one-stop strategy today, and it's very underrated by Doriano Ricciuti, who finds himself in 9th, also copied by Kent Nielsen, who rounds out the top 10. We note as we change over the page that it is the 8th time for Paul O'Regan that he finishes in 11th position, still with 30 top 10 finishes in his career and still no retirement. Nacho Gaspar will find himself in 12th, with Jason Green 13th. Norton Motta and Danilo Piazza will be the last two drivers on the lead lap. 1 lap down would be the likes of Lyle Pinar, Jorge Martinez on a 3-stop strategy. That one he will throw in the bin. That is not the sort of pace that he's hoping for out in these races. Brad Newman and Adam Webb, and then your 3 retirees, early as early can be. Alex Hagland, the Swede, running into troubles then on the opening lap. He came together with Anthony Catt in 22nd. George Van Rensburg having his own issue on the second lap of the race, causing his retirement as he spun out from 5th position overall. But from Mugello, which put on an absolute clinic of fantastic tactical racing to arguably one of the greatest circuits in the world. We'll be heading over to Suzuka on April 4th, so you'll have a little bit of a wait here. It will be a 2-week wait before we get ourselves that third round of the championship. But Suzuka, considered one of the greatest series finale circuits ever, now moving to this early season slot. This is going to be a very entertaining and interesting race to see whether the form will carry with an extra week of practice.
Yeah, of course, Formula One making the choice to move the Japanese Grand Prix from the start of monsoon season right to the end of monsoon season. It's kept things relatively drier in real life, and we certainly won't have to worry about rain when we go there in a couple of weeks' time. But if you have to pick a circuit to choose as one of the greatest all time, it is Suzuka. It is so evocative of so many championship fights over the years, especially, of course, Senna versus Prost on those two epic occasions. And it's filled with absolutely legendary corners. Casio Triangle, 130R, Spoon, the S's. Every single corner is an adventure every time you go through it. And we're going to have another field of such stacked drivers battling it out for 90 minutes on one of the best circuits in motorsport.
I will just slightly correct you on Casio Triangle. They now call it the Astamo Chicane over at that final section. Doesn't have the same ring. I will agree with you on that.
It's awful.
Yes, but that's sponsorship for you. Massive, though, in terms of this race. You can only catch that with us here on SimSpeed TV. Like, share, subscribe, and share to everyone you can. This is the greatest racing out there on the iRacing platform. You've got to jump in and get yourself involved and get other people to see just how good this is with us at SimSpeed TV. But from the entire team that's brought this one to you today, from Dan Yeaman and Taylor Mills, my name is Jake Sperry. That is as big of a challenge that Eduardo Rodis could have thrown. He put everything down on the board, but once again, the road to San Donato for Jacob Reed is paved with gold. He knew he had to gamble on that last lap. He played the cards perfectly. His 21st career victory in the iRacing Grand Prix Tour. He yells blackjack and he realizes Suzuka is next for the third round of the championship, and he will look to get himself into position with his championship as he looks for his second win of the year. And we will see you in 2 weeks when that comes into play. We will look to Mie Prefecture, Japan.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.